So I have a bit of an axe to grind today, and this is it. I think the most powerful open source tool you can use is English. I would specifically say English for reasons that I don't have time to go into over any other language, but we'll get to that at the end. But any language is inherently open source. So to start off with why, I want to ask, what's the most important kind of writing that happens on this floor? Anybody want to take a stab at that, what they think that might be?
Check writing.
Check writing. Check writing is very important. So, I mean, somebody could say, you know, it's a tech shop, somebody could say code, right? I mean, you could say that this is important because we have these lines of instructions that are used to make things happen in the real world that benefit people. But I actually think that the most important kind of writing is probably requirements. Because if you don't get the requirements right, then all the people can't be coordinated. You can't make something. You can be as talented as you want to. It doesn't work out right. I am a writer my entire working career, some 20 years of it. I've made my living by pushing nouns against verbs. I've never really had a day job. A lot of it has been making ads, objects like this, which sort of change in form, but I'm distilling meaning down very quickly to get an idea across. The biggest account I ever worked on was Red Bull energy drink. I was the ACD on that account in Los Angeles in that traffic. I've also written 6 books. You can find my stuff on Amazon. There's a series called How to Succeed in Evil. It's about a guy who's an efficiency consultant for supervillains. He tries to make them more villainous and profitable. I also spent about a year writing scenarios, level design, and stuff for Wasteland 2, which is a video game. So I've written a lot. Early access beta available on Steam right now, if anybody wants to check that out. So as you might expect, I'm quite a skilled writer, but not necessarily because I've done a lot of it. And the reason I can stand up here and have some insights about writing is I did this. Charles Ames is a designer. He designed a fabulous plywood chair that you probably would recognize. Most people aren't trained to want to face the process of re-understanding a subject they already know. One must obtain not just literacy, but deep involvement and re-understanding. And for me, my process of re-understanding writing came when I started teaching and coaching writing. And about 3.5 years ago, I did a bunch of this for Amazon for about a year for their leadership development group. And it's really helping executives and people improve their writing. Amazon's strategic process is writing, if anybody knows about that, and it's incredibly painful for someone who's not comfortable with their writing, no matter how talented they are. So I really started to ask myself a bunch of questions about what I thought I knew. Like, how is writing taught? Why do we look at it this way? Why do people who don't write for a living, you know, why do they look at it the way they do, and why do they make the mistakes? Why do they write badly? Why do they think it's a good thing to do? This is a really important question, because if what I'm saying is correct and nobody's in charge, how do you know what's good? Well, how do you know if a piece of software is good? How do you know if a piece of art is good? Right? We can debate about it, but I think, for me, it comes down to efficiency, power, and precision. With software, I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe you don't think about precision so much. Using your words and finding the right word. Precision is very important. If you forget a semicolon somewhere, like, it's just not going to work, like, depending on what you're messing with. But in writing, if you use a semicolon, it'll work, but lots of people will tell you that you've done it wrong. Basically, nobody knows how to use punctuation for sure. Like, I've been alive a little while, so in my lifetime, the correct standard for using commas has changed. And there are people who don't have real jobs who will fall on swords about this. So what I go for is elegance. I think it boils down to elegance in both domains. This is why all great writers, when they talk about writing, they invariably say something like this, especially great prose stylists. If you catch an adjective, kill it. And it's always about taking words out. So let's look at this. And to understand this idea of elegance in writing, you kind of have to look at something that does the same thing, but in a crappy way. So a great vampire squid wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into anything that smells like money. Versus, what does it say that Iranians can march by the millions, put life and limb on the line, while Americans sit meekly by as financial colossus with tentacles deep into the federal government enriches itself beyond our imagination on the backs of the poor and the struggling? Peter Dow, I think, was a speechwriter for Hillary Clinton. I don't really have a political agenda here. I just wanted an example of great writing that someone was very passionate about. They're not neither of these guys are messing around. They believe absolutely what they're writing in. But notice how this one it's longer, it's not as precise, it starts to fall apart. Everybody sort of seeing this? Doesn't have as much pop? So I think that what you could take this one and you could get to the other one by revising it. And Stephen King said revising down to the bare essentials is a little like murdering children, but it must be done. But I mean, to keep this analogy going, that's kind of like refactoring, right? So the business of writing, rightly understood, is largely a matter of killing words. You see, you can take it and you can cut some things out, and it actually gets much simpler. Did it lose anything? I mean, other than words, but in terms of meaning and punch and power? No. So my next conceit here is that writing is kind of refactoring. So if you have a technical application, your constraint could be, it could be connection speed, it could be processor power, whatever it is. But the constraint for writing, I do know, is your reader's attention. Now, I want to write something that's going to explain this. So let's try it. So the page is blank. We're at nowhere. We're at red, right? It's a sad fact of modern existence that nobody has enough attention. In fact, some thought leaders are referring to this as the age of distraction. Now this works. It passes the test of words on a page, right? Anybody fall in love with this? So this can be improved, and this is how I look at it immediately. Now, totally, I would write this sentence every day of the week, twice on Sunday. And then I would go back and say, okay, can I cut all the fluff out of it? And I've got nobody has enough attention. So continuing the same thought, I got to, each additional word you use demands more of a reader's attention. While transitions and style tricks are often nice, they involve a ruthless and unforgiving trade-off. Beyond a point, additional words make it harder to get to your point, assuming you have one to begin with. Yeah, it's a little long. So we're left with get to your point and have one to begin with. So now we have these two ideas in proximity, and I tidy them up a little bit. Nobody has enough attention. So if you want them to listen, you need to have a point and make it as quickly as possible. But the most profound thing about the way we live now is that we're all out of attention. We're the most over-messaged human beings in history. So we've got so much crap coming at us. And it's to the point where, like when I started my career in one of these buildings, like down there, in advertising, my job was to be clever, to stop people in a magazine, or to stop people from getting up and going to the bathroom in a television commercial. And you had a whole species of things like, like that Outpost.com Super Bowl ad where they fired gerbils from a cannon through the O in Outpost.com. Anybody remember this god-awful spot? So it's just pure spectacle. Like what's going on here? The problem now is that you can't actually be clever enough to really stop somebody. You can be informational, and maybe you can make a meme. Because if you're not clear, if it's not immediately clear, people they're overloaded. They just bail completely out of it. So the faster and the simpler you can make things by polishing them, the more powerful your writing will be. It's basically the entire point.